What's going on, YouTube? I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be ranking every faction in Rome Total War based on how much I enjoy playing them. And bear in mind, of course, this is all opinionated. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments below on who your favorite factions are. But I'm going to try not to make this video too long. So I will jump into it right away here. We're going to start with Armenia here. And I'm going to start strong here. I'm going to put, actually, Armenia is one of my favorite ones to play, I think. You start with a pretty good challenge. You're going to get attacked from pretty much every side fairly early on. So it's a little bit of a tough start. You're not making money. But if you can survive the early onslaught, you have a lot of really good units as you get into the later part of the game. And Cataphracts, 2-turn build, but god, they're fun to use. So I'm gonna put them in S tier. They're just a fun civ, especially like I said, if you can get past the early game onslaught and just start mowing things down with all of your really strong units, then you're in great shape. Britannia. You know, I'm not a fan of chariots. I'm really not. I'm debating. I'm going to put them in C tier because they're okay for a game if you want to kind of play a little bit easier mode. I would probably put them D tier if it wasn't for the fact that they're okay to play if you're looking for an easier game. Just because they can kind of chill up in the corner on their own for a while and build up money and military for as long as you really need to, because you're not likely to get attacked on your island up there. So, for the most part, they tend to be fairly easy to get a little bit of a start. But I don't love the chariots. Really, in general. I mean, they don't have much for cavalry outside of just chariots, really, and that's unfortunately. Cavalry is kind of king in Rome Total War. So, I don't know, just not my cup of tea. Alright, Brutii. The Brutii. I would say you have probably, out of the Roman factions, you have probably the hardest start with Brutii. Just solely based on the fact that you're going to be facing hoplites early on. You're going to be sent to go to war with Greece. And you're going to have to fight against the hardest military of the 3 Roman factions in the early game. However, as you get to the later game, they make a lot of money. I mean, there's so much money to be made outside of the areas of Greek and also Macedonian territories. And so once you get past the early game, it's really just coasting with them for the most part, especially after the Marian reforms. I mean, that's going to be the same thing with all of the Roman factions, is getting to the Marian reforms, and then you're in great shape the rest of the game. Easy peasy. But Brutii has an especially easy time after the early game because the areas you're supposed to go conquer are some of the richest areas on the map, so you'll be making pretty good money. And so you get a little bit of an early challenge, which is fun, and then you typically don't have too much trouble with late game. Carthage. I'm going to put Carthage at S tier. I have a... there's a special place in my heart for Carthage. I just think they're so fun to play as. You're likely going to be at war with Rome very early on in the game. If you don't attack them, they will likely attack you within the first 5 turns. So it is a good opportunity to get rid of them fairly early in the game, and so you don't have to worry about them getting to the Marian reforms and having to deal with their extremely strong units in the later game. And so I don't know. I think Carthage is a lot of fun to play. War elephants negate the need for having battering rams or anything to help take walls. However, they're very expensive and 2-turn build, so Just fun to use in general, though, I think. Okay, we got Dacia here. I am struggling on where to put them. I'm going to put them in B. You're not in a great economic situation in the early game, so you do have a bit of a challenge early on. You're in a similar situation to Armenia that you're kind of surrounded, but you do have some rebel settlements you take, but you can also expand. I don't want to say fairly easily, because you are very poor, and so it's hard to build up your units early on. But once you take one or two settlements, you can usually expand fairly easily once you're making a little bit of money off of them. And there's no other faction in the game that can build archers as early as them. So they're kind of fun to use if you like using archers. I've not been as big of a user of archers as I should be, but they've started to kind of grow on me. So I'm putting them in B. I don't enjoy the early game with them just because it is extremely troubling financially, but if you're looking for a good challenge, they're a lot of fun to play if you're looking for a challenge. Egypt? I don't know. This is a tough one to place because they're one of the easiest, if not the easiest, faction in the game. They start in a great location. They have great growth. You can expand eastward and take out the Seleucids fairly early on. Take a lot of land out that way. You can get Northern Africa fairly easily. It is a while before you're able to take on the Romans. I mean, unless you just beeline straight for them, but then you don't really have stuff to help you at home as much. But they grow very quickly, and you can expand pretty quickly with them. I think it feels, I don't want to say too easy. Yeah, it is kind of too easy, actually. I'm going to leave them in C. I don't get as much fun out of playing them as I do these other factions above. And by the way, I'm not ordering these in order, like within each tier. But Egypt, you shouldn't have too many struggles with them. And so, I don't know. I'll put them in C. They just feel a little too easy. Gaul here, we're going to put them... I'm going to put them B tier. It sucks not being able to make your city beyond tier 3. As with any of the barbarian factions. So, that part does kind of suck. I could have said the same thing about Dacia, and honestly, they end up in the same area anyways. They don't have such a troubling start as Dacia, necessarily, but they are kind of surrounded by people that will likely declare war on them fairly early on. You'd want to get some sort of, like, either with Britannia or Germania, you're going to want to get, ideally, some sort of a non-aggression pact or alliance. So you're hopefully not getting attacked by them early on, or Spain. Spain is likely to attack you fairly early on anyway. So if you can get some sort of a non-aggression or alliance with them, that's ideal, because you're very likely to be going to war with Julii extremely early on in the game as well. So just not the easiest early game, but they're just kind of fun. I don't even know why. Barbarian factions in general, I get enjoyment out of. Plus, you can stick it to the Romans early on in the game, get them out of the way. And then, after you do that, you can kind of worry about expanding into other areas. But the Romans are tough to deal with late game, as I've mentioned, so getting them out early is helpful. Germania, I'll put them in A. I think that's a reasonable area to put them. They do have pretty strong units in comparison to the other barbarian factions. They have spearmen that can form phalanx, so that part is pretty strong for defensive battles. I'm not a fan of phalanx on the offense by any means, as I'm sure most people aren't, but very strong defensive unit. You can really defend settlements with less units than would normally have to if you can use your phalanxes properly. That said, They don't have the easiest early game. You're likely to get attacked fairly early on, but you can kind of make a beeline down toward the northern part of Italy and take out Julii fairly early on, just same way as the Gauls. I just like the units that Germania has a little bit more, so I'm going to put them in A, because I think they belong a tier above Gaul and Dacia. Greeks, I know I just kind of talked up hoplites a bit. I mean, if you like Spartans, I mean, the Spartan hoplites are extremely strong. They take 2 turns to build, so it's not like you're going to be able to build up a whole lot of them, but, again, I'm just... Hoplites, like, I talked them up. They're good for defensive battles. I'm going to put them C tier. Hoplites are good for defensive battles, but they're just not good for offense, and that's like your main infantry. I put Germania higher because they have other infantry that aren't hoplite based that you can use for more offensive things. Really, with the Greek states, it's mainly hoplites, and so offensive battles are a lot tougher. And just I don't get as much enjoyment out of it in general. So for that reason, they're going into C. So now we're at Julii here. I'm going to put Julii in A alongside the Bruttii. And the reason I'm putting them in A is probably largely nostalgia based. It's everyone's first campaign, basically. So there's definitely some nostalgia there to it. They have a much easier start than the Bruttii. You can expand north into the territories of Gaul fairly easily without having to deal with any sort of phalanxes and stuff in the early game to make the battles a little bit more tough. I don't like fighting against phalanxes. I just don't do well. I know, I understand, just flank them, but for whatever reason, I just don't like it. That said, Julii does have an easier time expanding. They struggle in the mid-game financially, at least in comparison to, like, the Bruttii, who is going to conquer rich territory. Gaul is not rich territory, so you're not going to be making as much money. However, there's a lot of nostalgia there. The units are all the same, for the most part, as Bruttii and Scipii. And so, I think they get A based largely on nostalgia. But, it's my funness tier list, so here we are. Okay, Macedon here. I'm gonna put them in C tier for pretty much the same reasons as the Greeks. I mean, they're a little bit better than the Greeks to use. I just don't get as much enjoyment out of, like, largely hoplite battles. It just isn't as fun to me. It's definitely an easier time to expand than the Greeks. The Greeks are likely to get attacked on multiple sides in multiple different areas because you start with so much land. Macedon is pretty centralized, and you can kind of expand from there a little bit more easily. And then I think that they have a couple better units than the Greeks, short of Spartan hoplites, but I think they're on a similar tier to the Greeks just in terms of how fun they are. Right, Numidia. We are at Numidia. I'm going to give Numidia... I'm torn on this. I'm going to give them B. They're not terrible, but they're not great in terms of how good they are. It's a little bit of a tough start, but if you can expand, take out Carthage early on, you're in pretty good shape. Their units are okay. Like, a lot of people kind of clown on them for having completely trash units. They're not bad. You don't have a lot of selection, though. And so it does get a little bit repetitive, just spamming out the same units over and over again. And, it's not an easy game, and I think the challenge is fun because of that, but by the end of the game, it does get a little bit boring. So I'll put them in B tier. They could maybe go into, like, the low A- or upper B tier, but Just, they're kind of mid in terms of how fun they are. All right, we've got Parthia here. I am tempted to put them. I'm gonna put them in A. I don't know if there's gonna be anything that falls lower than C here. By the way, just for what it's worth. But Parthia we're gonna put in A. They have an interesting starting location on the very edge of the eastern part of the map, and you can kind of. I don't want to say you can tunnel in there a little bit for as long as you want, because you're likely to get attacked eventually, and you want to be aggressive and expand anyways, but you have a defendable area, and you don't have a lot to start with, but you do get some pretty solid units, and especially they also get cataphracts. So I think they're reasonably fun to play if you're okay with a slower start. Just because they're not going to have a ton right off the bat. But they do have a lot of land and a lot of land to cover with their units, so that part makes it a little bit slower. And you're not the most financially secure right away either. But again, fairly fun campaign, especially once you get past the first little bit and you can start making some really solid units. You're chilling after that. And you're having a great time. So yeah, A tier there. Pontus. You know what? I'll put them in A tier. I don't have as much fun with them as I do with Armenia, but they are on a similar level. They're probably the upper part of A tier. I enjoy them. They have fun units, and they start in a similar area. And so the expansion is going to be fairly similar to what you get with Armenia. And you're going to be going against a lot of the same enemies. And you have pretty solid units as you get into the game a little bit further as well. So, I mean, it's honestly a lot of similar comments to what I made with Armenia. But I don't know, they're just fun. Put them in A. They're on the upper tier. I'm gonna put the rebels in D. I haven't even went in and changed the files to add rebels. And same with SPQR. I'm gonna throw both of them in D just because I haven't changed the files to add either of them yet. So I haven't touched either of them. I can't speak on them. And we'll move past those. All right, we've got Scipii. I'm gonna put them in B tier. They're the lone Roman faction in B tier. Do I want them in B tier actually? Yeah, no. I was gonna make a comment about how they have the best naval unit in the game. But you don't get to fight the naval battles, you just auto-resolve them. I think if you had the ability to fight the naval battles, I think they'd maybe go up a tier, because that would just make having the best naval unit in the game feel more meaningful, more fun. But, I mean, it's all the same units, but your starting situation is a little more split up than the other Roman factions. And you're going to be expanding across the ocean, likely going to war with Carthage early on. So, I mean, you're getting good territory if you take over Carthage, and then, yeah, I mean, it's Northern Africa beyond Carthage is kind of meh, but Carthage is great. So, I mean, there's that going for it. But again, if you could fight naval battles, I think they'd be a lot more fun to play, just because they have that strong naval unit. They have the Corvus Quinquereme. So, yeah. All right. Scythia, I don't know. I mean, Rome 2 pronounces it Scythia, but I've always said Scythia. I'm gonna keep saying Scythia. I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna put them A tier as well. I mean, strength-wise, they're S tier. They've got horse archers, but that's about all they've got. Like, is horse units. Personally, I like infantry units, so I make things harder on myself by spamming infantry units, even though cavalry are king in this game. But horse archers are just by far the best unit in the game. You can harass any unit and then just retreat anytime they start coming your way without having to worry too much. And so, I mean, strongest in the game if you use them right. But I think I just like infantry too much to to just use cavalry in every battle only. So I'm gonna put them in A just because they're strong and they're fun to use as a result. But I just like spamming infantry. All right, Seleucid Empire. We are putting, you know what? I'm putting them in S. I don't care. I don't care. They're really fun. You get a really wide selection of units, including elephants, cataphracts. Just a little bit tougher at the beginning because you're gonna be going to war with a lot of people probably, and you're a lot more spread out, so you're not necessarily going to be able to defend all your territory. It's a little bit of a struggle early on, but they just have such fun units to use, and you are one of the few factions that's close to Egypt and able to take them out early on, and if you do, you get some really rich territories. You get a lot of growth if you take their cities, and then yeah, I mean, just fun all around, I think. Spain. No, they're going D. I don't have a lot of fun with Spain. Like, I mean, I still enjoy, the game as a whole is fun. None of these civs are just not fun altogether to play, but by comparison, I think Spain is the least fun to play. They're, I would say, the worst of the barbarian factions in general. I think that they have the hardest time out of the barbarian factions. You don't get great units. You don't have extremely rich areas. And you have to do a lot of walking. I mean, in the early game especially, you're not going to have a navy really worth building up early on to travel around with. But your expansion is going to be into the Gallic territories. You're not going to make a lot of money in there, as I said when we were talking about the Julii. So you do have a bit of a tough game with all that stuff stacked up against you. At least the Julii, they have decent units, whereas Spain, they just don't. But they still face all the same negatives as Rome and then some. So, put them D. I just, they're okay, but not particularly fun to me. All right, now we get race. We're gonna put them in B. Put them in B. They're solid. Get a pretty good start. You can start and take Constantinople right away. And that's a great city to take. You can work your way south and take out the Greek states down in, the Greek peninsula. But also Macedon, and you can make a lot of money off of those territories. We went over that before. It's the richest area on the map. So if you can take them out, you're going to be making solid money the rest of the game. And they have some pretty solid units that are fun to use. So we're putting them in B tier. Again, this is a tier list based on what I think is fun to use, not what I think is the strongest. So just bear that in mind with the comments section. I appreciate you all watching this. I'd love if you guys commented below on your opinions on some of your favorite ones to play as. Otherwise, I was thinking about starting a campaign, playing through with one of these factions, obviously, and putting that on the channel. But we'll see when I get time to do that. I will probably plan on doing that, but yeah, thanks guys for stopping by. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.